and put your hands together for Robyn Day.
It's 2 a.m., November 2016. I'm sleeping in my apartment in Manhattan and my phone rings. It's my older sister. She said, "You need to come quick." Daddy had a blood clot, hit his lungs. I was out the door and on the road in 15 minutes. I drove straight through the night. 14 hours, New York to Georgia, just to be by my dad's side. That's a long drive. And the whole time I'm thinking, why did she never transfer him to Emory University Hospital? She promised me she would. On the first day, second day, third day, fourth day, she promised me she would transfer him. But it never happened, and here it is the 7th day, and I get this call. I'm also a little annoyed with her as well, because I had called the night before and asked to speak with him in the hospital, but I wasn't allowed. Even though he had 4 other visitors at the time and could still speak, but he wasn't allowed to hear me tell him that I love him, because she is the gatekeeper. Anyway, I arrive. I drive through the night. I'm standing beside my father's bed. I'm holding his hand. He's unconscious. And I can feel him squeezing my finger. I can feel his hand. I can feel his pulse. I felt like he was trying to communicate with me. I leapt for joy. I was so happy. Maybe I'll just see those big brown eyes again, you know? And I go and I share this news with my older sister and my mother. And I'm told by my sister, "He didn't know it was you, Robyn. He doesn't know you're there." I leave the hospital the second day about 6 p.m. The whole family had been there, and I get a call from my sister again. "You need to come back to the hospital. Daddy's slipping away." I was back in CCU in 5 minutes. It was just my sister and myself in the room, and when I entered, she was hysterical. She was crying, she was begging Daddy to stay, wait for Mother, just wait for Mother, please wait for Mother. And I could see the situation, and I knew that this was it. So I began to thank my daddy. I thanked him for being my daddy. I thanked him for being my rock. I was his son. He never had a son. So I was his son. I was his boy. A little skinny girl growing up, and I was his bones. And those were my 3 nicknames from my daddy. But I thanked him. And I told him I'd see him really soon again, and I told him to give my love to Granny and Papa. And then as his oxygen levels dropped from 13, 12, 11, I began singing Anne Murray's song, "Could I Have This Dance for the Rest of My Life? Would you be my partner every time?" Those were the last words he heard. The funeral was lovely. It was packed. I mean, my dad had tons of friends, tons of friends. He was a cut-up. Born and raised in the South. He was a farmer, then truck driver, then supervisor for the state of Georgia. Everybody loved him. So now it's 1 month later. September 2016. Again, I'm sleeping in New York. That's not all I do, but I was sleeping in New York. And all of a sudden, I find myself in like a crystal clear vision. It's like an IMAX theater. That's how clear it is. And I'm entering a room. And there's this large desk. And on one side of the desk is this man wearing a suit and tie. And on the other side is my mother and my older sister. and her best friend, and my niece and nephew. My younger sister is not there. And I entered the room just in time to hear this man ask my mother, "Are you sure you want to remove Robyn from the will?" She turns, looks back at him, and defiantly says, "Yes." I turn to leave the room without a word, but my feet are stuck. They're stuck. I cannot move my feet. And it felt like lead. So I look down, and my feet are covered with soil and leaves and earth. And I'm still struggling to move my feet, but they won't come up. And then finally, with all my might, as hard as I pull, I'm able, and I hear a snap, and my leg freeze. And I turn around and look, and I have roots coming out of the soles of my feet, about this long. And I drag myself with my roots following me out the door. I wake up. It's 3 a.m. I'm pacing the floor of my apartment, and I'm wondering what the hell just happened. And I'm shaking, and I'm pacing, and he hadn't been past a month. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. It's the same thing it's been for decades. It's inheritance betrayal. And it's always perpetrated by the women in my family. See, my father was a farmer, born and raised in Georgia. He had 2 sons, both of which were born and raised in Georgia. They all worked the farms together. So when my grandfather passed, he made my grandmother the executrix of the will. And he wanted everything divided, all the assets, all the property, everything, farm equipment, everything, 50-50 in monetary value and division of property, everything. My grandmother takes a look at this 200-acre plat, and she draws a line right down the middle. But it was a little crooked. And my daddy's older brother, he gets about 110 acres. He gets the family home, fully furnished. He gets all the farm equipment, all the tractors, all the barns, the silos. It's a massive catfish pond. And Daddy gets 90 acres surrounding the house, which he had built. But before she deeds him this land, she goes over and she cuts a huge percentage of his trees. And then she takes that timber money and she divides it between his other brother and herself. And Daddy gets a third. But the older brother winds up with the lion's share of everything, even though they both have 3 daughters, which is regardless, it doesn't matter. Even though they both have 3 daughters, they've both been good, hardworking sons. Now, my uncle can't take the money because he's going through a little financial crisis, okay? Little situation. So we have to put the money in his oldest daughter's name with the promise, a written agreement between my grandmother and him, that as soon as he got his little situation straightened out, it would go back into his name. Well, I want you to know this was 1988. My uncle died in 2006 without his inheritance ever coming back to him. Ouch. And this, my first cousin, has never given any of it to her 2 sisters. So I knew exactly what I was dealing with here. And then I had a little flashback of a conversation my sister had with me while we were in the hospital the day I arrived. Robyn, if anything happens with Daddy, now I'm just going to tell you, the trees are being cut. I'm like, when I don't, I'm like, I don't care what you do on your side of the land, but I have no intentions of cutting my trees. She says, well, the trees are going to be cut, and my daughter, her daughter, my niece, will be moving in with my mother because my mother will have lost her mind within 6 months. I'm like, well, she's always been pretty damn sharp, as far as I can tell. So I don't see how you're seeing all this. Well, anyway, so now I know what's going on. So it's 2 months later, October, excuse me, I'm back in Georgia helping Mother go through my father's clothes, sorting out his personal details. Mother gives me this little 2-page contract. Well, actually, it's not a contract, it's a will. It's a 2-page will saying that everything she owns would go to Daddy, everything Daddy owns would go to her, should either spouse pass first. Totally fine with me. And then the kids would get the land and the house. Fine. She said it's the same 25-year agreement that your daddy always wanted. That's what we've always agreed on. I said, fine. She gives me this blank piece of paper, nothing on it but some lines for the heirs to sign and some lines for a notary. I'm like, well, number one, there's no notary here. And number two, what is this? And what am I signing? I mean, hello. You know, I don't typically sign things that are going to be notarized without knowing what it is. Well, Robyn, this is for the probate. We've got to put it in my name so that everything's done properly, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, oh, well, yeah. And then here comes the waterworks. And my mother is not a crier, okay? So here it comes. And so I'm like, okay, well, she did just lose her husband of over 50 years. She did, my dad. And so I sign under duress. And I'm pissed off about signing. But anyway, I leave, I sign, that's it. We're doing the little small talk, chit-chat, this, that, and the other, all the way knowing that I went against this premonition, this vision, because it was a premonition. I went against it, I signed, now it's February. Get a phone call from her. Robyn, I just want to let you know, I'm going to be cutting a few of the trees. Okay. Where? Oh, on your sister's side of the land. Well, why are you cutting them? They're diseased. It's bad. You know, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, I said, well, look, I'm going to be home tomorrow. I'll be back in Georgia tomorrow so we can talk about it. Within 24 hours, it went from we're going to cut a few of the trees to 80 acres out of the 90 acres are being clear cut. Clear cut. Clear cut. The contract's been signed. The check has been cashed. There is no going back. You can't change my mind, Robyn. Nothing can be done. And I'm asking her, I'm begging her, I'm pleading with her. I'm like, why are you doing this? Why have you made this kind of decision? What on earth? Well, there's debt on the estate. But see, what she will never tell you is that was her debt on the estate. It was not my daddy's debt on the estate. See, she had been paying off her other 2 daughters' bills for about, I don't know, 3 decades. You know, couple repossessed house, repossessed vehicles, Verizon phone payments, about 20 years of those. You know, breastfeed them till they're 50, that's her motto. You know? And here I am, poor straggling bottle baby, paying her own bills since she was 18, right out of high school. And I'm thinking to myself, debt on the estate, the debt on the estate is yours. But I even said, you know what? Because she told me how much it was. I said, but don't blame this on Daddy. Don't act like this was Daddy's debt on the estate. Because she was illegally signing off, borrowing against his name. All the land was in his name. But see, she had a lot of contacts. She's one of those. And I love her, don't get me wrong. I love my mother, and those contacts have pulled me out of some crap when I was younger. But now I'm not so young, and I don't want them used against me. So we had the conversation. I'll pay off your debt, Mother. Just please put my 45 acres in my name. That was my grandfather's land. That was my daddy's land. I love trees. I love nature. Just please put it in my name. I'll pay off the debt. No. We don't speak from February until July of 2017. And she tells me before I leave in February, see, I have a cabin built on those 45 acres. I said, Mama, I've got this cabin built over here. What am I supposed to do? Well, you can either take the 45-acre clump of tree stumps and, you know, I said, well, who's gonna clear these stumps? Who's gonna replant these trees? It's not just pine trees, it's oak trees, maple, elm, beautiful. I mean, some of them over 100 feet tall. Who's gonna pay to clear all of this? Oh, well, I hadn't thought about that. I mean, you know, she didn't think that through. You know, and that inheritance, that was it. That land, that's all I was getting, was my land. That's all Daddy wanted me to have. You know, well, not all he wanted me to have, but that's all that I knew that of anything he had that I was getting. And I loved him so much, and that land, and here it goes. So we didn't speak, but if you don't want the land, I'll pay you back, I'll pay your investment off. I'll reimburse you your investment in the cabin. We didn't speak. February to July. And even at that, she would reimburse me after she dies, in her will. I'm like, wow, okay. So July comes, I send her a text. I'm out of pocket now. I've paid for it now, I'm out of pocket. She sends me a check, exactly the amount I had in it. And I said, I just thought to myself, I'll walk away. I'll forget the whole thing. I'll just walk away. I'll walk away from the land. Thank God I got my own investment back. I always knew that she mismanaged Daddy's money, so what am I going to do now? I'll just walk away. September, I call her. I'll be home, empty the contents of my cabin. I'll just, you know, spend a little time with her, and that'll be it. When I call her to tell her I'm coming home, she says, well, I've made a decision on what I'm going to do. I said, what's that? I'm going to give all the land to your older sister and the cabin. So you're going to give her 45 acres, my 45 acres, and then my cabin. And then I get reimbursed from the timber money that you took off my side of the land for my cabin. As you can imagine, I'm pretty freaking allergic to my mother right now. Okay, so I drive on, and as soon as I pass my driveway, she didn't even tell me they had started cutting the trees. As soon as I pass my driveway, log trucks, 53-foot log trucks, I mean heavy-duty industrial equipment. And you can see my cabin. She's standing there like a bare-naked lady around all these tree stumps. I'm like, that's pretty, because it was tucked off way deep in the woods. And this was only day 2 of the cutting. So I go to the house, you know, feign my disapproval. Hi, how's everybody doing? Like I really care. I'm so self-involved right now because I feel like I'm dying, you know, but I go on. And then day 3, I go buy a 6-pack of beer, go sit on the steps of my cabin, and I sit there and have a little chat with God. And I'm like, what is going on here? I mean, what happened to my dad through his mother broke his heart. I saw a light go out in his eyes. And I was trusting my mother. I was trusting my sister. I was trying to trust them, even though the red flags were just waving, you know. And I sit there, and all of a sudden, this big double rainbow just appears out of nowhere. And it lights the entire 200 acres off of my grandfather's land. And I thought, okay, I'm supposed to stay. I'm going to stay. I'm going to see this through. There has to be something I'm missing, or something I'm going to learn, or something about this that's really going to bring some light to it. Well, excuse me. The trees kept falling. It was an assault on nature. You could hear them, and if you have never heard 80 acres of timber being cut all the way around a family house, you don't know what you're missing. There were no birds, no more deer, no raccoons, no possums, nothing like that. Just silence and chainsaws. So I kept myself busy. I says, I'll just help Mother around the house to keep myself from choking her, basically. So I was building a ramp. You know, she has a little golf cart, had herself a new Jim Dandy golf cart out the back door. So I built her a ramp so she wouldn't fall down. The ground was uneven. I built her this ramp. And then that night in my dreams, my dad appeared. And he was on that golf cart, honey, and he was shoving it into gear and trying to figure out which way is reverse, and then he took it off the ramp, and then he picked up the 2 ramps. I don't even know where he put them. And then he just drove off into the woods. I looked out the door in my dream, and the grass was beautiful, green and lush. It wasn't the bumpy foundation. And it was kind of like a message. Here you are, Robyn, worrying about her losing her balance in life while she's ripping your foundation out from under your feet. And I just kept having all of these visions of him. I'd see him walking through the woods, and this is big sky. We're in the country out in Georgia. I'd see him walking through the woods, through the stumps, looking at the carnage. It was heartbreaking. This rocked on for about 6.5 weeks of straight cutting, 5 days a week, 100 truckloads of timber. And my mother, I finally said, Mom, I want to see that piece of paper I signed. I want to see the contract that was attached to. My mom, about a couple of days later, she walks into my room, sashays into the room, drops it down. Is this what you wanted to see? Here it is. I couldn't even bring myself to open it. That night, I had this thought, our conversation, this weird, it wasn't even a conversation, it was a comment. She made this comment to me at the hospital. You don't look so confident, Robyn. I'm thinking to myself, confident about what? At the hospital. You didn't transfer my daddy. I begged you to. He sat here 7 days in a small town hospital. You didn't transfer him. And now I'm starting to think you didn't transfer him because everybody was too busy planning a takeover of the estate. And these are the dark thoughts that I'm having. But I don't have anything to disprove them. And now I have this package. So I open it, and there it is. My daddy's last will and testament. Wasn't this two-page flimsy little piece of paper my mama gave me? It was his last will and testament. And he's a man of integrity and true to his word. Robyn gets the north 45 acres I bequeath to my daughter. And my other sisters get what they were promised. And my mother had a life's right to live in the house. And she was his executrix, meaning that she was supposed to disperse this, give it. She signed an oath. And now it's mysteriously all in my mother's name. I went and spoke to an attorney, as any good Southern woman would. And I spoke to my daddy's attorney that drafted his will. Well, I spoke to his firm. And they told me, Robyn, yes, ma'am, you need an attorney. This is illegal. She can't do any of this. She doesn't have the right. She was supposed to give it to you. And then if you wanted the trees cut, you could deed it back to her, a warranty deed it back to her. But she can't do this with the life rights. And it even says on the last will and testament, not to be mistaken with a life estate. So I've spoken to 3 attorneys now. So I'm good and a little hot under the collar. So I decide, that's it. You know, I had this conversation with her. I bring it to her attention. And I say, I keep pushing her. I keep pushing her for it. I keep pushing her for it. I even swung by her attorney's office, and I have to admit I did put the fear of God in that man. I did. I do believe he shit his britches. I'm going to tell you that right now. But it's nothing a little OxyClean won't take out. So much so that he called the police on me. But I was fast. I was gone. So I get home and have this conversation with my mama. It was about a 10-minute conversation. And he had already called her, shaking in his little shoes. And had this conversation with my mama. And I just started pushing her. She was sticking to it, man. She was sticking to it. Just like she had been telling me this lie for 15 months. She's sticking to it. And finally, she said, and I knew I'd get her right there. She said, you are not going to come in my house and talk to me the way you're talking to me. And I said, and you are not going to go on my land that my daddy left me, steal my inheritance, cut down my trees, and pocket the money. And she said, oh, well. I said, what did you say? Oh, well. I could hear the music rising in the background. Oh, woman, it's on. I'm gonna tell you, you may be my mama, but this shit is on. This went on for a hot minute, and then she said, because I told her, she said, you go, you show your tail, but she didn't say that. I've said enough tonight about that. But anyway, you do this, you do what you want to do, and you see how far it gets you. I'm like, well, I just might do that. I could actually press felony charges against the notary. And I don't mind doing that. They left out a crucial detail. And I could do that. And I may do it. Just to piss somebody off. I mean, it's not like my feelings hadn't been hurt any at all, you know. But anyway, so this is how it all played out. November 3rd, 2017. That's the last time I've spoken to my mother. Nothing through the holidays, nothing. We don't speak, and she dang sure won't ever admit that she's wrong, even though 3 attorneys will tell you that she is. So we've not spoken anymore. I really don't know how it's going to play out fully. But I do know that my conscience is clean. I do know that I tried to love my family and tried to bring us together. There was no time for mourning for my father. It was a race to the estate. But the last day my daddy was alive, my sister and I held hands at the foot of his bed, actually right after he passed, and we said a prayer, my older sister and I did. And I wanted her to feel good, because I was upset about her not transferring him, and I said, you did a good job. And she just looked at me and started shaking her head left to right. And she said, I don't know if I did or not. I don't know if I did or not. And that broke my heart. And to think about it after everything I went through broke my heart. But Daddy knows I love him, and Daddy knows that I put up a good fight, and I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. And I'll always love my mother. But I just can't look the truth in the eyes of my mother and my sister and pretend it doesn't exist. Thank you.